So we're going to take a look at how do we compare and the following rational numbers. How do we determine which one is the bigger value? So here we have these two numbers, 2.1 and 2.4. And so we're going to compare using our less than, greater than, and we could also use equal signs as well if we get to that point. So when we compare the following rational numbers, okay, 2.1 and 2.4, which one is bigger? Well, let's look at the numbers ahead of the decimal first. Here we have a 2, here we have a 2, so those are exactly the same. Now we know that we can see that there is a single decimal place in each. This one is a 1 and this one is a 4. And if we're using positive numbers, the first decimal place, okay, means the bigger the number. So it means that 2.4 is bigger than 2.1. So we can put that little sign in there. Now remember, with the open mouth there leads to the bigger number. Okay, so a less than sign means whatever's on this side is smaller than the other side. Greater than means whatever's on the left is bigger than the right-hand side. So that's going to represent that 2.1 is smaller than 2.4. Okay, again, same number of decimal places. We can often see that. Now there's a difference when we start talking about more than one decimal place. Okay, so let's look at here. We have 4.3 and 4.03. Okay, the 4s are exactly the same, and after the 4 we have a 3. But now which one is bigger? Because it's just the 3 is the last number. Well, again, some of you you may kind of have this, and you might find it, or you already know how to do that. But just let's go through this here. Okay, 4.3 and 4.03 are different numbers. If we see a different number of decimal places, what we're going to do is we're going to change that to be the same number of decimal places. So 4.3 and 4.03, you'll notice here this has 2 decimal places, this has 1. Let's add a second one. Now we're dealing in hundredths, okay, because they both have 2 decimal places. This one here has 30 hundredths, this one here has 3 hundredths, okay? 30 is bigger than 3, meaning that 4.3 is bigger than 4.03. And so I'm just going to do a little bit of notes here on that case. So when two numbers have a different number of decimal places, we're going to add zeros to the end of the smaller, add zeros to the end of the smaller one to make them equal or make them up. We're going to put equal in here. It's a little bit small. It was supposed to be a different word, but I'm going to use equal. So we add zeros to the end of the smaller one. So that's what we did here. We added a 0 to make them equal numbers of decimal places. This will make it easier to determine which one is larger or smaller, or I'm going to use the word bigger. Okay. So it's going to help us to figure out which one is in fact bigger. Now, again, 0.3 and 0.03 look very much the same, but if we add in the same number of decimal places, so they're both in hundredths, okay, both 2 decimal places, we notice that there's 3 here and there's 30 here. Now we can actually, because they're the equal amounts, we can actually determine which one is bigger. Now, when it comes to negatives are a little bit different because negatives go the opposite direction. So here we have negative 1.9 and we have negative 1.86. Different number of decimal places. This one has 1, this one has 2. So let's add a second one in there. Now you'll notice we have 90 and 86. But because it's negative, we're going the opposite direction. So a smaller number means it's bigger. Yes, I realize that seems a little bit awkward, but the smaller value here means that it is in fact bigger. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use the smaller number as the bigger one. And so negative 1.86 is bigger than negative 1.90. And it's because they have the negatives there, we look for the smaller number as the bigger. It's just like negative, whichever one is closer to 0, negative 1 is closer to 0 than negative 3, so that would negative 1 would be bigger. Okay? We can also think of it, let's say, as a bank account. If you have negative $1, okay, that means you owe $1, or if you have negative $3, you owe $3. The better one, the bigger one for you is the negative 1. Okay, so that would be the bigger value. So that's where negatives work. Question 2, I'd like you to take a look at that. Go through. There is figuring out with rational numbers here, with decimals, which ones are bigger.